The Battle of Waterloo, fought on June 18, 1815, was one of the most decisive and iconic battles in European history, marking the end of Napoleon Bonaparte's reign and the conclusion of the Napoleonic Wars. I'm Kyle, the host of History of Human Evolution. I've just finished my PhD in history, so I'm here to guide you through the journey of our species. If you like to explore the past, hit that subscribe button, like, and leave your comment. The background to the Battle of Waterloo is deeply rooted in the political and military upheavals of the Napoleonic Wars. By 1814, Napoleon Bonaparte, after over a decade of dominance in Europe, had been forced to abdicate and was exiled to the island of Elba. The Bourbon monarchy was restored in France under King Louis XVIII, and the Allied powers of Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia sought to establish a lasting peace through the Congress of Vienna. However, the situation in France remained volatile. Napoleon's reforms and military legacy still held sway over large segments of the French population, particularly among the army and the emerging middle class. Dissatisfaction with Bourbon rule, combined with economic hardships and political instability, created fertile ground for Napoleon's return. On March 1, 1815, Napoleon escaped from Elba and landed near Antibes with a small force. His march to Paris, known as the Flight of the Eagle, was a bold gamble. Along the way, soldiers sent to capture him defected instead, and by March 20th, he had reclaimed power without firing a shot. This dramatic return, known as the 100 Days, stunned Europe and reignited fears of renewed conflict. The Allied powers swiftly mobilized to counter the threat. Declaring Napoleon an outlaw, they committed to a coalition to remove him from power once and for all. The Seventh Coalition, led by Britain and Prussia, prepared for military action while Austria and Russia mobilized forces in the east. Napoleon's strategy hinged on speed and surprise. He understood that the Allies would require time to fully coordinate their armies. His plan was to strike quickly against the nearest forces, separating and defeating them before they could combine. The two principal Allied armies under the Duke of Wellington and Field Marshal Blücher were positioned in Belgium, and Napoleon aimed to exploit their geographical separation. By June 15, 1815, Napoleon crossed the border into Belgium with approximately 120,000 men, initiating the campaign. The French quickly engaged the Prussians at the Battle of Ligny on June 16, achieving a tactical victory. Simultaneously, Napoleon's subordinate, Marshal Ney, fought Wellington's forces to a draw at Quatre Bras. However, these actions failed to decisively cripple either opponent. Napoleon's inability to fully destroy the Prussian army at Ligny proved critical. Instead of retreating east, Blücher regrouped and pledged to support Wellington. This coordination between the Allied commanders set the stage for the confrontation at Waterloo, where Napoleon hoped to defeat Wellington before the Prussians could arrive. The stakes could not have been higher, as the future of Europe hinged on the outcome of the coming battle. The forces engaged at the Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815, represented a convergence of some of the most formidable military powers of the era. On one side stood Napoleon Bonaparte's French Imperial Army, composed of seasoned veterans and fresh conscripts. Opposing him were the combined forces of the Duke of Wellington's Anglo-Allied Army and Field Marshal Blücher's Prussian Army, forming the Seventh Coalition. Napoleon's army, numbering approximately 73,000 men, included a mix of infantry, cavalry, and artillery. At its core were the Imperial Guard, an elite unit composed of battle-hardened soldiers, considered the backbone of Napoleon's force. The French army boasted around 48,000 infantry, 14,000 cavalry, and nearly 8,000 artillery personnel manning 250 guns. Napoleon relied on the speed and maneuverability of his troops, along with his mastery of battlefield tactics, to deliver decisive blows. However, many of his soldiers were young recruits, lacking the experience of his earlier campaigns, which contrasted with the professionalism of Wellington's forces. The Anglo-Allied army, under the Duke of Wellington, fielded approximately 68,000 troops. This coalition force was a diverse mix of British regulars, Dutch Belgians, Hanoverians, Brunswickers, and Nassau troops. Among these, Wellington's British infantry was considered highly disciplined and well-trained, forming the backbone of the Allied defense. The coalition's cavalry, numbering around 12,000, was supplemented by 156 artillery guns. While not as unified as the French army, Wellington's command emphasized defensive resilience, using the terrain and fortified positions like Hougoumont and La Haye-Sainte to blunt French offensives. The Prussian army, commanded by Field Marshal Blücher, played a crucial role in the outcome of the battle. With an effective strength of around 50,000 men, the Prussian forces were divided into 4 corps. Despite being battered at the Battle of Ligny 2 days earlier, Blücher's army regrouped and advanced toward Waterloo with remarkable determination. Their late afternoon arrival on the battlefield, striking Napoleon's right flank, shifted the momentum decisively in favor of the Allies. In total, approximately 190,000 soldiers participated in the Battle of Waterloo, making it one of the largest and most complex engagements of the Napoleonic Wars. The varying compositions and levels of experience among the forces highlighted the coalition's challenge in maintaining cohesion, while Napoleon's reliance on speed and decisiveness underscored his need to strike quickly before the coalition armies fully combined. This dynamic set the stage for one of history's most iconic and hard-fought battles. The Battle of Waterloo, fought on June 18, 1815, began under ominous skies, as heavy rain from the night before left the battlefield muddy and difficult to traverse. Napoleon, seeking to exploit the divided forces of the coalition, launched his attack later than planned, giving the ground time to dry and his artillery greater effectiveness. His strategy centered on breaking Wellington's Anglo-Allied army before the arrival of Blücher's Prussians. At the battle's outset, Napoleon relied heavily on his trusted marshals and his ability to deploy troops quickly and effectively. However, the terrain and weather conditions worked against him, with muddy fields slowing troop movements and limiting artillery effectiveness. One curiosity is that Napoleon reportedly suffered from hemorrhoids and a stomach ailment during the battle, limiting his mobility and forcing him to delegate more than usual. The battle opened with a French diversionary assault on Hougoumont, a fortified farmhouse and stronghold on Wellington's right flank. Napoleon hoped to draw in Allied reserves, but the defenders, primarily British and Hanoverian troops, held firm throughout the day. Despite intense fighting, the French failed to breach Hougoumont, which became a focal point of the battle and a symbol of Allied resilience. In the late morning, Napoleon directed a massive attack on Wellington's center, led by General d'Erlin's I Corps. French infantry advanced in dense columns, targeting the ridge where the Allied army was positioned. While the French initially broke through the front lines, they were met by a devastating counterattack from British and Dutch-Belgian forces, supported by the British heavy cavalry. The French were driven back with heavy losses, leaving their momentum stalled. As the battle raged, Marshal Ney, commanding the French cavalry, misinterpreted a movement in the Allied center as a retreat. Acting impulsively, he ordered repeated cavalry charges against Wellington's infantry squares, unsupported by artillery or infantry. The Allied troops, disciplined and entrenched, formed tight squares to repel the cavalry, inflicting heavy casualties on the French horsemen and exhausting their strength. In the afternoon, Blücher's Prussians began arriving on Napoleon's right flank, engaging French forces at the village of Plancenoit. This new threat forced Napoleon to divert precious troops to hold back the Prussians, weakening his main attack against Wellington. The Prussian advance added immense pressure to the French, further straining their lines. In a final effort to turn the tide, Napoleon committed his Imperial Guard, the elite corps of his army, to a direct assault on Wellington's center. The Guard advanced with legendary discipline, but the Allied defenders unleashed concentrated musket and artillery fire, halting their progress. A counterattack from Allied infantry broke the Guard's formation, and their retreat signaled the collapse of French morale. When the Imperial Guard was forced to retreat, it reportedly refused to surrender. The phrase, "the Guard dies but does not surrender," became legendary, though it is likely apocryphal. With the Imperial Guard in retreat and Prussian forces overwhelming the French flank, Napoleon's army disintegrated. The battlefield became a scene of chaos, as French troops fled under relentless Allied and Prussian pursuit. By nightfall, Napoleon's once formidable army had been decisively defeated, and his ambitions for a restored empire were crushed. The aftermath of the Battle of Waterloo marked a seismic shift in European history. Napoleon Bonaparte, once the dominant figure in continental politics, was decisively defeated. His army, which had entered the campaign as a formidable force, was shattered beyond repair. Casualties on all sides were staggering, with the French suffering approximately 25,000 killed and wounded, 8,000 captured, and thousands more deserting during the chaotic retreat. The Anglo-Allied forces under Wellington recorded around 17,000 casualties, while the Prussians sustained roughly 7,000 losses. In the immediate wake of the battle, Napoleon fled to Paris, where he attempted to rally political support to continue the war. However, the defeat at Waterloo eroded his authority and the confidence of his allies. Facing insurmountable opposition, he abdicated for the second time on June 22, 1815, in favor of his son. This marked the definitive end of the 100 Days and his reign as Emperor of the French. Napoleon's enemies, led by the Seventh Coalition, were unrelenting in their pursuit of a lasting peace. Napoleon attempted to escape to the United States, but was intercepted by British forces. On July 15, 1815, he surrendered aboard the HMS Bellerophon and was subsequently exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, where he lived out the remainder of his life until his death in 1821. His reflections on Waterloo were filled with regret and analysis of what he believed went wrong. The political ramifications of Waterloo were profound. The Bourbon monarchy was restored in France under King Louis XVIII, and a period of relative peace in Europe ensued, maintained through the Congress of Vienna and the Concert of Europe. This system sought to prevent the rise of another dominant power like Napoleon and ensured a balance of power among the major states. For the victors, the battle solidified the reputations of both the Duke of Wellington and Field Marshal Blücher. Wellington was hailed as a hero in Britain, while Blücher's determined leadership secured his legacy as a pivotal figure in the coalition's victory. Waterloo also became a defining cultural and historical event. It symbolized the end of the Napoleonic era and the start of a new phase in European politics. Its significance was immortalized in art, literature, and public memory, serving as a touchstone for discussions of leadership, strategy, and resilience. The battlefield itself, marked by landmarks such as the Lion's Mound, stands today as a poignant reminder of the day when Europe's future was decided. We'd love to hear your thoughts on possible future topics. What areas of human evolution would you like to explore next? Leave your suggestions in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going. As always, our references and further reading are listed in the description below if you'd like to dive deeper into the subject. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. And do not forget, subscribe to The Knowledge,